All right, you guys, thanks for tuning in to the first, third, fifth, or 12th edition of what we're about to do. I would like to start off by introducing myself. I'm Dr. Ben DeLuca. This is...
I'm Dr. Kevin.
Dr. Donald.
Colt Johnson.
So we're here today with Colt. Colt, please tell us a little bit about your background, a little about what you do, and you do some really, really cool stuff for the military. So just kind of introduce yourself and tell us about
All right.
yourself.
Well, I'm Colt. Go by Coach Johnson mostly. Background: high school multi-sport athlete, wrestling, football, track, baseball, a little bit on the swim team, but the main three: football, wrestling, and track. And then from there, I was in the Marine Corps, I was in Special Forces, so Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team, which is basically like a high-powered SWAT team. Do a lot of what people see the SEALs do, just on a smaller scale, to guard U.S. assets basically around the world as a fast Marine. Then from there, I was in the infantry, just as an infantry squad leader. And then I was a first-degree black belt martial arts instructor, where I would train the company up and my Marines that's underneath me and train other Marines to become an instructor as well. Post-Marine Corps career, I went to Appalachian State, played Division I football for about 2 years or so as a running back, so I was a little bit thicker then. And then towards the end of my college career is when I really started to get serious in developing my speed. So just learning, studying, perfecting technique is a big thing. So I started training in 2018 for track and field, due to injuries and movement or whatever. Once graduating with my exercise science degree, concentration in strength and conditioning, I moved to Kansas where I started training tactical athletes. So from there, I trained the 97th MP Battalion, so military police. Then from there, I trained the 10th Mountain Division, which is basically infantry for the Army. And then I currently train Navy SEAL and SWIC candidates to become a SEAL or SWIC. So I train operators now, essentially.
So before we get going, let's thank this guy for his service. Sounds like anything he does it to the max. You could say that about you?
Yep.
I always thought your Colt was a nickname and that's what people called you just because you were fast as shit.
No.
But that's the actual name, so you just live up to that. So one thing, like, we met through this guy right here, Kevin, and I was able to just go down to the track one time with him. And that one time I went down with you, I was able to pick up a couple key techniques that helped me move from really slow to faster than a sloth. And I was really happy with being able to hear that. Dr. Kevin, however, works with him on a regular basis. And I've seen just secondhand through him serious increases in what he's done from a speed standpoint and how he implements things. A couple questions just off the bat. You're currently working with like SEAL teams. We look at like demands, right, of what a SEAL demand is. You think about military, a lot of times when people think about military, it's running, it's doing big humps, it's long distance stuff. Got endurance, right? That's what you always think of, or most people think of when you think of military. When you look at like the demand for like a SEAL and some of these tactical teams, where do you really see like strength and conditioning fit in? Are these guys just endurance monsters? Or do you see that you're going back into more strength and conditioning things like track and field principles, speed principles, power principles? Where do you think it actually sits when all the dust settles on what they need based off the demands of the job?
So one of the things that I do, which I think is overlooked, is just really the basic. I look at the body structure. What is your makeup? Mesomorph, endomorph, ectomorph. The people that have completed Hell Week, that have completed BUDS, what do these instructors or operators look like? They tend to be built as a mesomorph. Okay, so if they're a mesomorph, compact, short torso, naturally, what are you kind of going to be a little bit good at? Probably not super short, but like a middle distance type of, you're going to be kind of naturally there, you're going to be somewhat strong. You can probably gain weight easily as well as fat, right? If you don't pay attention, and you know, I'm a mesomorph, so I like you gain fat pretty easily. So I look at that. So nice, tight torso, kind of cinder block shape. Okay, now what's the job demands or requirement? Movement to cover, movement to contact. Quick things I need to be react fast, you know, minus the cognitive stuff like, you know, quick reaction time. I need to be able to react fast, get dressed fast, shoot, move, and communicate. what energy systems do they use? I just,
Yeah.
Okay, then well, I know I'm glycolytic, I'm using my phosphorus system. Now outside of this, what are the tests that the either Navy, Marines, whatever branch require me to do on a yearly basis? 1.5 miles, 2 minutes push-ups or pull-ups or sit-ups, sometimes 3 or 4 mile tests. But if you look at what the job demands, I'm like, that's kind of counterbalanced. Now, granted, you may have to hike a few clicks, if you up 10, 20 miles. Granted, you need that, okay? From my experience in hiking, what got me better at hiking? Learning the pace plus being strong. I don't think ever me running further got me better at my endurance. It was really learning the pace, because there's a pace standard, which is 3.5 to 4 miles, so really around 4 miles an hour, which is a 15-minute mile. So really learning how to walk that constant speed for an hour was a hard thing to do.
So when you're talking about like demands and different kinds of things, like you said, you think of like the terms of long hikes and that kind of stuff. And what you're saying is we're looking at energy symptoms and things that got you better. It wasn't just necessarily, all right, my guy's got to get hiking, so I need to make sure that they can hike for a really, 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 really long time, and that's going to help them prevent from being tired. It sounds like just the physical demands of what is going on is giving you enough aerobic base that you don't need to focus on the aerobic base. Like that's going to be given, and the demands of the job might cover that. So then you're looking at performance, right? Like when we look at like a soccer player, right? Or something like that, where we want to think about, do they need to be able to run like in a marathon distance? Or do they need to be able to build up more of that high-end power? Because a lot of what they're going to do is just going to give them the base that they need. And the areas that they need more of is either going to be maxed out effort, high intensity and push, or on the flip side, probably recovery, right? Like, and I would imagine 100% of your people on that team have like a type A personality, in the sense like you don't get through buds unless you are mentally tough.
Yes.
Your mental toughness, all the physical characteristics that you need will just kind of happen as you move through that process, but you're mentally tough. How often do you see like you need to rein guys in versus crank them up?
And then what does that look like too?
Yeah, what does that look like?
Recovery conversation or implementation of that.
It's a unique balance, because outside of their training, there are things they need to take care of. So yes, we'll swim them, run them, do strength and conditioning. They'll do their extra exercise, which is remediation, PT. But outside of that, they gotta make sure their weapons is clean. They gotta make sure their room is clean. They gotta make sure the knives is sharp. They gotta make sure their people in their boat crew or team is squared away. You might have to go off and do a meeting. The instructor may say, hey, we need X amount of guys to come help move things. Really, in day one, we do a run familiarization class where we go over mechanics, different type of run training we'll do throughout the program. And main thing is recovery. I say, when all else fails, go to sleep. Don't worry about stretching, don't worry about a Theragun, don't worry about voodoo floss or gua sha. Go to sleep. And I also say, granted, I understand how I would be in there as being prior service, lower, enlisted personnel. I understand, I need to make sure my room's squared away, or I'm like, one, try to keep it clean, but I'm like, it's better spending an hour, especially if you're gonna get remediated. If the training, if it's gonna be physical the next day, I'd rather get that hour of sleep. My room not be 100% spotless, and you take that extra training as it comes, but at least your body is able to, handle that load from you getting 7 hours opposed to 5 hours because you're trying to stay up doing extra stuff.
And it sounds like that timing is important too, right? Like if you're gonna have a hell of a workout the next day, or there's gonna be a test day the next day, it's gonna be, all right, get your rest on these days. Make sure that you are prioritizing this stuff as opposed to the other things. It's kind of just like smart training in a sense that they're in the weeds, and you have the opportunity to stay out of the snow globe and be like, yo, this is for your benefits.
Yeah, like
Get
it's,
some sleep.
I'm like, it's like I get it. Like I would have wanted to keep my room clean, all my gear tied away, you know, everything squared away. But I'm like, knowing what I know now, I'm gonna go to sleep.
So recovery is huge. Go ahead, Kevin.
No.
You're about to ask them a question.
No, I was gonna ask, so with all that going on, how would you program that with a large mass of people? With all that going on, this, you know, the recovery aspect, what about in terms of like a management of like training with all that going on?
So I follow the pretty much, of course, at 100%, 10% that don't really need any help. It's 10%, it's not gonna make it at all. Train to 80. You train for the 80. What's the 80? Okay, you look at over a year, I'm looking at, okay, what's the average height, what's the average weight, about 5'10", 170. All right, mesomorph, right? What that body structure, I did even more research. I looked at 800-meter runners, how they built. Then I look at what's been shown that muscle fiber types they are heavier on, which is type 2. Type 1 muscle fibers, I think is about a 70-30, which also wasn't far off from like a sprinter or a weightlifter, things like that, football, rugby, basketball. So they're about 70-30, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And I train, I pretty much say I want to train like 800-meter runner. 800-meter, 5'10", 170. I'm like, okay, that's a good looking individual. Like they can hold some muscle, but they can move really well.
Oh yeah.
And so I look at that, and I know, the bottom 10, they either didn't play any sports growing up, and didn't work out, prior to going to boot camp. So I'm like, I really can't, in this finite time, I can't do anything. Then you got 10% got guys that were triathletes in college, or endurance runners in college, or they just go getters and like to train.
Yeah.
Okay, I just give them a little bit. And those are the guys I tend to be like, okay, on this workout, hold back a little bit, and on these, hey, you send it and do what you need to do. But really I focus on that 80, and then how can I, whatever the average is, I got the rule of 10. How can I move this 10% upwards? So if I'm hitting 10 now, hitting 10% is hard.
Oh yeah.
But that's really where you move the needle, is once you get that 10% change across.
And everyone's following that program together, right? Like
Yes.
they're doing like the timing on like day 1, 2, 3. They're doing it together.
Yep,
And are those intensities like undulating, or like how do you like manage that in that large? You know what I'm saying?
It's also a sweet spot. So my job technically is I'm a run coach, but I'm a strength and conditioning coach is trade, and then I've trained swimming. I was a swim instructor as well, run swimming. So I look at and I try to talk to the other coaches about swimming and running. Now, of course, there's test gates. We can't change that, right? If they have to do a 2-mile swim, I can't say, hey, we're gonna cut it in half. That's just the test they have to do. We gotta do a 4-mile run. That's just the test. But prior to that, I look at, okay, if we want to do 400-meter repeats today, maybe it's not ideal for them to do the 2-mile swim this day. If they're doing 3,000 meters of a pool PT, maybe let's cut that down, and then maybe they do more interval work instead of a long swim. Or if they're doing more interval work, okay, let's do a tempo run today, or let's do just a steady state run at a lower speed, miles per hour. And then I look at what do they have the next morning. So it is undulating, because when I look at the schedule, I see what's pretty much in the afternoon and what we have in the morning, and then base the volumes off of that. And it's not always ideal, but
Yeah. So it's like a moving target, because you have like you're working around their other schedules and their other coaches that they're working with in their programs.
Yep.
Which is actually kind of similar to like a high school athlete or something like that always has some shit going on, right? So you have to it's kind of like a moving target of like both how do you feel today, but also like what's on your schedule.
Yeah, so you're training, again, the goal of an elite forces athlete is the job, right? So you always have to make sure the training, the numbers that they show on the training are important. However, they're not as important as their ability to function at their job. So identifying what they got coming up on their schedule, and then trying to plan and train backwards as best as you can is huge, right? And I think that's where you start to implement those recovery strategies the right way. and how you said getting them more prepared for the test. I think it's really interesting though. A lot of times when people would think of like a four, what would you say? How far was that swim? 4?
They do a 1 and 2 mile nautical mile swim.
So a 1 and 2 mile swim. It's like one thought process would be, can I get these guys to? If I can get this athlete to swim 3 miles, and then they're not going to have a problem with the 1 or 2 mile swim. But that's not really the case, right? It's more like we might need to actually train them harder on these shorter distances, and it's going to increase their horsepower. So when they hit that 2 mile swim, they're fine because their base is solid enough. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, because I look at also the residual training effects. Like we know that your aerobic development takes about a month to lose it, but the shorter the distance or the higher intensity, we lose that within a week if we break it down to
The
speed.
adaptation.
Like we know it's training like, hey, if you're not sprinting at least once a week, good luck.
You get
And
slower.
if you're not
You're gonna
in
get slower.
shape, if you're not already in condition to sprint, you're not doing that 2 times a week. You start over every week. And I think, I emphasize like speed or interval training, but I think just my background and how my makeup is, they don't want to think I'm training for 40 but I'm like, no, they just need to do speed work so we can do 100-meter repeats, 200-meter repeats. At the end, we started implementing berm sprints, which is basically like hill sprints on the beach. So, it's only 15 meters, but that repeated bouts of, high output definitely benefits your aerobic development. And there's studies on that anaerobic speed reserve, like that person that has that higher anaerobic speed reserve is going to win, if their aerobic development is the same. So it's like, why not we put some more emphasis on this?
So
Because they'll get the aerobic stuff in their training in general.
Yeah, and even for the candidates we train, so they run probably anywhere around 30 miles a day. And a lot of it is transits, like they run to and from, so I'm like, they're getting plenty of the aerobic development. That's put a little bit more weight on.
What's the lowest hanging
Power.
fruit for them? Where they're going to train and touch a lot.
Yeah, that's put a little bit more emphasis on this, so that they can carry them, because when you start buds, I mean, you're carrying logs and you're carrying a boat pretty much the whole time of your first phase of training.
Mhm.
So I'm like, to carry a boat, okay, maybe it's about 8 people, boat's around 200 pounds, about 30 pounds a person. Like, to carry a boat up a berm or in soft sand, it requires you to be strong. Like, the pace is only gonna be the pace because you can only go as fast as the slowest person that's on the other end of the boat or the other side of the boat. So it's like, and this is a tactical, I see it as a tactical problem across the board, just training different branches, is the overemphasis on aerobic development and not being strong. Not super strong, you gotta be, lift 500 pounds, squat 500 like I do, but hey, be able to squat 2 times your body weight, or, and be able to handle it with good technique, good form, and be fast. That doesn't mean you gotta run 11-second 100, but be able to get to cover, get to contact, which buddy rushing, if y'all familiar with that or seen that, I'm up, you see me, I'm down. That means I'm shooting, I get up, I do a 15-yard sprint, I get back down, I start shooting. That's high bouts
fast.
Yeah, that's high bouts of effort. If you don't want to get shot and you don't want your buddy to get shot, I need to be fast.
You need to be fast, right?
I need to have
Faster reaction.
I need to have
Yeah.
that phosphogenic glycolytic energy systems well developed.
And it's going to be repeatable too. Cause just
Repeat,
thinking
and I
about
say
it.
that repeatable. That's one thing. Be able to repeat high bouts of effort.
So I got 2 questions. So when we look at like somebody that's the demands for buds, right? Like the demands for buds. Buds is like the training you do for SEAL, basic underwater demolition school. You look at the demands for buds, which is like notoriously is you ring. Everyone knows about you ringing the bell,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you get up
It's
out of
great-
here,
It's
you ring the
crazy,
bell.
right? And then you actually look at the demands of the job. Do you think like the demands that you have to put on the body for buds, the way you would train and prepare for that, would be different over time than the demands that you would actually need when you're in the field?
Yes, they will train. Now, the training is designed to make the most elite, which Navy SEALs are. So I understand why the training is how it is. You need to be able to stay up 3 days in a row sometimes. And when you stay up 3 days, you need to be able to function. You need to fight through, seeing those images with some sleep
Shoot,
deprivations,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You need that, and that requires, that's really more, I say it's endurance, but I think people misunderstand it's not really a physical endurance. I say the training is endurance based as a whole, right? I need to be repeated bouts of effort for 8 hours, but I don't train to repeated bouts of effort. I just learn how to run 8 hours. So like, well, how can I do this? But I understand, to go back, I understand why the training is long, but the advance will change because you're doing, you got to learn how to clear a building, right? That's speed. I need to learn how to get to cover, get to, in and out, infiltrate, exfiltrate, get in and out the area as quickly as possible, as safely as possible, with no casualties, and go about my day. So they will change once you're done training.
So 2 more questions related to that. So if you were to compare like the demands that the body would need for something like BUD/S, right, pre, what would you compare that to? Like, would that be comparable to like triathlete training? Would that be more comparable to like long distance track and field, like guys that are running longer distances? And then what would you compare, I guess, once you've graduated BUD/S? Because BUD/S is also just about being mentally tough, right? We like talked about that, and the physical demands they put you through is just to be, it's like you gotta be able to do this to get here. Now that you're here, here's the next step. And when you hit that next step of what the demands of the actual job is, what kind of sport, I guess, would you compare that to as far as the demands? And when we look at like elite level athletes, so third part, where would you compare like a somebody's physical fitness level that is either like BUD/S or that is a special force guy to other elite level like athletes like football, basketball, or soccer?
So sport comparability, I've done this before, and I try to bring it to either whoever I'm training, the troops I'm training. I'm like, okay, if this is the job demands, I can ask the question, what sports do you think are applicable or close to what you got to do? I hear rugby, football, basketball.
Yeah.
I hear triathlete or marathon, which I'm like, you sure? I hear marathoner. But I would say basketball, football, rugby, 800-meter runner, just the development that they have to go either to the left, for speed, or to the right to go a little bit longer. And then really one that's just on the conditioning level, a boxer. Not necessarily, they're not going to be really strong, weight-wise, but their type of conditioning that a boxer does, they have that repeated bouts of effort, and you still have to get your road miles in to be able to go 12 rounds.
Yep.
Like you got to be able to get those 5 miles in a day, or 3 to 5 miles in a day to carry you later on in the fight. So I look at football, for instance, what are they heavy on, right? That anaerobic threshold, that heavy glycolytic training. And even from experience, when I was in the reserves, when I was in college, I had to do my 3-mile test. I didn't know, no training. All I've done was gassers. So down and back across the field for time, and you got to do 24 of them, right? That was to build up to 24. I'm like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I can run 23 minutes. Now, granted, that's not my fastest. In the military standard, 23 minutes is not a fast 3-mile. But technically, 23-minute 3-mile is a good run.
Yeah.
Like that's under an 8-minute pace. Like that's a good run. And I was able to do that with being nicked too, like injury wise. And I'm like,
And never touching a 3-mile.
and never running anything over
That's
53, so 106 yards at a time, 53 and a half across, 53 and a half back. And I'm like, how am I able to do that? What system did I make a juggernaut? And so I think people don't, either their background or what they were able to do, or what they're able to do in the military is like, they kind of, it's hard to be unbiased and like, no, well, I did this and
Sure.
this, where I'm like, well, I didn't do that. And
So I got like a top end speed question for you, right? Because there will be coaches, and this can get kind of controversial on, does like, for example, like a football player need to even work on top end speed, right? Like what benefit does it have versus really focusing on heavy acceleration, right? From most positions. Where do you feel like something like top end speed falls into strength and conditioning for like a special forces kind of guy? And is there a lot of value adding top end speed training into what they're doing or periodizing it in versus being able to focus on that speed endurance component and staying really heavy in that glycolytic system?
I think top end is important. I wouldn't say it's super important, but I think it is important. And I think just the not understanding of it and just not knowing. Like, we don't know what we don't know. And when someone comes in, it's like, oh no, you need to train. We need to do some sprints. We need to do some 50-meter repeats or 100-meter repeats. They're like, no, we don't need to do that. Just because you don't know what you don't know. And Leaning, you got to look at, if football is one sport we can compare the energy systems and just how they need to train or how they need to just be the strength coaches and the data scientists say, hey, you know that you need to train top end. And if we go back to repeatability, I can repeat higher bouts of effort that may not be at my top end speed, but I can go harder, longer, more. And once again, I've seen some papers that show that it's improving my aerobic development as well. So I think it's important, just not super important. They should touch your top end speed. But in our training, you don't need to really touch it that much.
Yeah, I mean, personally for me, when I started to try to incorporate more top end speed and just being able to push those thresholds and that higher demand, I noticed that I just could jog better, right? Like I just wasn't as bad. Maybe it's sometimes like that joy doesn't, you can't experience joy without experiencing pain, the pain of the top end speed.
I even take it a step further is when I say learning how to sprint is a skill. We all do so if I'm learning this skill, and I say as an adult, is it easier or harder to learn? It's harder to learn as once you become an adult, you know a bunch of stuff. So I'm like, okay, if I'm learning a new skill, I'm increasing my cognitive ability. Okay, if I learn how to sprint, I'm increasing my muscle coordination. We know sprinting makes us stronger. It's going to develop muscles, right? It's one of the best hamstring prevention exercises is sprinting. So why not sprint? There's always that question. I just leave. Why not do that if I can get all of these benefits? And then I even say, during COVID, I say, you ain't got no equipment. What can you do? One thing that's gonna maintain strength or get you stronger and make that body look good.
Absolutely. Force production.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's a reason that you can see. There's a reason that you never see 100-meter sprinter that looks the way they do, right? You're not gonna see a 100-meter sprinter that looks like a lineman, but you will see a marathon runner that looks like a lineman, right? And that just comes down to the straight demands placed upon the body and the adaptation that occurs. Regardless of nutritional intake, if you're running at those really, really, really high speeds and high end, it just your body creates the form to adapt.
Yep.
And I think that to go out of that into the fitness realm for a second, if you focus on people trying to make them faster versus trying to make them leaner, which can be toxic, that you're going to end up with a lot healthier population that actually can run faster with the body they want because they're meeting the demand that's put upon them versus trying to live a certain way. Just to kind of take a full circle understanding it.
Sure.
And I know personally, I got a lot leaner when I was able to incorporate more sprinting, and I think it just strictly had to do with my ass couldn't be so fat when I tried to move it faster. The demand on it just leaned me out.
Yeah, sure.
And I was doing what I felt like was less work, but was seeing better results on that side of the house.
I think going back to health too is you talk about speed is not always trained, especially when people get older, they lose the cognitive, the neural ability to move fast. The first thing that we usually lose when you get older is power and speed, right? Yeah. So when you see old people, falls, everything, they lose the ability to catch themselves.
Yep.
So
because they're not twitching, right? That's the first thing they lose.
They lose the ability to react and then able to create that balance and the forces that they need.
Okay, I got a question. So we know this. I think most people know that they're gonna, or I'll say most practitioners or clinicians know that if you don't use your tight ones, you lose them. Yep. Right? You use fast twitch. Some people have a higher amount, but pretty much everyone, if you don't use them, but we do know we can keep our type 2. Why do you think people don't train the type 1? If we know, or even practitioners put more, maybe a little bit more emphasis on, hey, doing some 10-yard sprints here and there to keep whatever you got or develop more.
I think it's a fear of, it's a twofold. I think that clinicians and practitioners stay into this rehab purgatory, that there's this correct way to move, and that you need to move like a baby, or whatever it is, you just underload the system as a whole. I feel like, I think that's a big one, and then I feel like people are afraid to hurt people. But I look at it as like, when I look at a distance runner, I think you can control volume with intensity, and you with sprinting or acceleration drills in place, like even just acceleration drills in place, when you're like you're really powerful, you're in place and you're not even covering ground. The risk is so low, and the range of motion is increasing, because if you're jogging, your range of motion is pretty restricted, right? Like marathon runners that don't do anything other than running, they're notoriously stiff, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so sprinting increases range of motion, and to me, I think it's injury prevention, if anything. Right? But I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I think that those false beliefs hold our industry so deep.
And what's interesting too with that is you'll see, sorry, Kevin, cut you off. What's really interesting is I've seen people that have come in that are runners, right? Like they like to do like Orange Theories or those kinds of things where they're doing a lot of steady state jogging. They'll come in with like a hamstring injury, and they jog, but they can't run. So when you try to, and there's a big difference in stride length and a big difference in that. And I was rehabbing this gal the other day, and she's like, we're running, and my injury's not bothering me when I run. It only bothers me when I jog. So part of the strategy to get her better was, and again, we didn't go top end sprint. We just was like, can I get you out of a jog into a run? Can I change the stride? And that strategy allowed her, I guess, jogging pain to kind of recover as we introduced this. And then when she went back to her running, she PR'd. She PR'd on her mile time. And I think it was just kind of bumping up the horsepower, changing the stride length, doing something that looks similar, right? Understanding the difference between a jog and a run and being able to put those in play, and then over time start implementing bigger, more powerful, like sprint style strategies, pushing her top end. We got really good results. I think when we look at like clinicians, like you're talking about, there's a big disconnect between what we do is we need to be able to have a stronger strength and conditioning background, and then also we need to pull from like that fun side, that occupational therapy background. And if we could put those two principles, we need a lot more of that going into what we're trying to do to get people to feel just generally better, right? Because you're doing things that make them happy, and at the same time you're doing things that make them better, and you're not just making them tired.
I think
I've
it's
digressed.
I think redefining like pain management, right? Because pain management isn't just about like symptom changing. That's only one component of it. You still have a organism to build, right? To help create this functional envelope where you have a buffer of capacity that exceeds the demands that they're going to be placed upon them. Whether that's fucking gardening or sprinting as hard as you want.
Kevin, I know you had a question for our guy.
No, I just want to say, go with the clinicians and practitioners. I think one of the things is leveraging like the scalability of what you do with those, like sprinting. Like where do you begin this person? Where's the starting point for this person? Like how can we start with the rudiments and build that into accelerations, into some tempo runs, into max velocity? Like where can they begin? I think that's gonna be a big thing. What levers can we pull? The force side, the velocity side for that person. So I think there's a lot of like clinicians don't understand where the levers, like some things like for a hamstring strain, you can probably start somebody with short accelerations, because then you don't touch top end speed where a lot more hamstring injuries usually occur, right? So then you can put a sled on it, you can change the force output of that, slow them down, and then you can redirect the forces a little bit.
And I think that's where you'll see like a lot of NFL teams, NBA teams, that they're changing the stuff to be performance therapists. Like their PTs are have backgrounds in strength conditioning, and like their clinicians have backgrounds in strength conditioning because of that overlap. Now it just doesn't even become a disconnect. Like there's, and I think that slowly it'll get into the healthcare system, maybe.
Well, it will. We are the healthcare system. We will impact it that way. We're doing it currently. Couple things, man, before we gotta wrap this up. I know you gotta get going and wanna be respectful of your time. First question, if I was like a young person and I wanted to train and I wanted to be like a SEAL or going to serve my country and be in the special forces, what advice would you have to me, both to get my body ready, like where should I start? That's simple. And then second, to get my mind ready. Because there are young people out there that are going to be defending our country and taking care of all of us to be able to do what we want to do. What would advice you have for that?
I would say, first, your mind. What's your why? And then when you go through training, especially if you want to be anything special forces, that why is going to get tested for sure. Like we all know, Marine Corps boot camp is the longest and the most physically demanding. Then outside of that, I went to Fast Company, which is Special Forces, which is also physically demanding. You know, it's pretty much training day in, day out, and then go to sleep. So why? As simple, as cliche as mine, you know, my why is what I wanted. I said I wanted to be a superhero. As a young kid, who didn't want to be a superhero? Like,
You are a superhero.
So
man.
it's like-
Come on now, you hit that goal.
What is
Won the
the most
game.
realistic way that I can become a superhero? Join the Marine Corps. And then, okay, what do I need? And when I think Marine, like, I didn't really know much about the Marine Corps when I decided to go to the Marine Corps. But I hear the word Marine, I think action figure. Okay, if the person looks like an action figure, I might want to train on how to look like an action figure. So, but that was my why. I want to be a hero. Now, so in case I need to go to combat or, you know, whatever, I'm supposed to protect my brother or my sister to the left and right. I'll make sure they come home, and vice versa, they make sure I come home.
So you went in there trying to look like G.I. Joe.
That's what I try to look like, a G.I. Joe with the buzz cut on the top. And so just know your why. It's going to get tested, especially if you want to be in special forces. For sure, it's going to get dark, but just keep your mind on it. You know what your objective is, not what you told somebody. You know if you really meant what you said. If you wanted to be a SEAL, like, you know if you really meant it, because it's going to show. Either you're going to ring the bell or you're going to complete the mission. Now, granted, if you get hurt, then what, you reassess, you get better, and you keep at it, or you try again. So I mean, there's nothing you can do. You know, if an injury happens, but if it doesn't happen, you know deep down, and most of the time, like, you know, you only get about 10% that is successful. Why? Because that why wasn't strong enough.
So what would you tell like the 17, 18-year-old Colts now that got that why, right? That are like wired like you. Now how are you gonna give them an edge? What are you gonna tell them? Hey, you might want to try to do this kind of training, or here's a sport that you might want to consider jumping into.
Well, hopefully they already play sports, because if not, that's just, to them, that's a disadvantage. So that's already, I wouldn't say a disadvantage, you know, not a big disadvantage, but you just having that athletic ability, that agility, that change of direction, learning how to work in a team, because you can't carry a boat by yourself. I know David Goggins is famous for who's carrying the boats, but you can't carry the boat by yourself. You can't put it on your head and balance 300 pounds and run down the beach.
So team sport, we got that. Now what if I want to look like an action figure coach?
You
Give me that one.
You need to get with, and it's hard, because I'm more of a prove me right when it comes to training, because I know it's a lot of misinformation out there, so I'm always going to not give you the benefit of the doubt, and trying to find that coach or trainer that really knows what they're doing is hard. And so I'm really working hard to make sure we put out some information so that 17-year-old kid can, you know, have the right information. But hey, reach out to people that's at where you want to be. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, it's not hard to find maybe an instructor, or reach out to the recruiting office, or try to find me or other coaches that actually work in these tactical populations. and say, hey man, this is what I want to do. Can you help me?
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is find someone that's done it. Go investigate on your own, right? Spend some time looking at those branches where you can hear it. You'll find some good information. Do you have any specific information that you want to promote, or where someone can follow you or learn more
Where
about
can
you?
find you at?
Oh, you can find me on All In Athletics, all.in athletics. Any questions, I answer questions. If you ever seek me out, want to train, I always welcome people to come train with me.
Absolutely.
I will tell you, you need to sprint. And 99% of the times I hear, well, I don't like sprinting. And then I'm gonna start occasionally, why? It hurts. So I'm like, well, you might want to do it then if it hurts. So if you ever see me out on the track, for
You gotta-
sure,
you
I'm
gotta
gonna
be
say,
all in.
You gotta be all in. That's the way, through consistency and discipline. That's my motto. I try to do that on a daily basis. Whether I hit it or I don't, I still try to hit that every day.
All right. Last, you guys got anything else you wanted to round this out? 'Cause I got one more question for this guy.
I just want to say thanks.
For sure.
Thanks for your
Appreciate
time.
you.
Thanks for the talks. Always
Yep.
a
Thank
great
you,
time.
again, thank you for your service.
Been a good training partner, good mentor, good friend, always
Yes,
providing like the
Appreciate
best
you all.
value.
Yeah.
Help me get faster and smarter with the stuff that we've been going through this year too.
Kevin's fast.
So always pushes me.
He is moving.
He's moving.
I
That
know,
was
yeah.
moving.
The first day we
Yeah.
sprinted what this year, couldn't even accelerate.
Yeah, he moving now.
Yeah, he is.
Before you ask your question, I got a question for all of you.
Yeah.
You can only pick, and I'm stealing this from my friend. You can only pick 3 exercises. What would they be? And just
Weight
for life. And
weight, and
Any-
you have weight. You have everything.
Let's go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Weight or no
Okay.
weight.
Okay.
If you only
Got
had
it.
3 exercises,
I
what
would
would
go.
they be and why?
I would go trap bar deadlift because I could do it in a bunch of different speeds, a bunch of different loads. I would go push press, and then I would go pull up just because I gotta look good. So I got the pull ups that would make me look good. Push press I could do in different speeds, different weights, and train in different rep ranges. Same with trap bar, and then hopping and running and that stuff's a given. That's not a
No.
Okay.
That's out of it.
So that's out of
Yeah.
it. Then?
Sprinting and jumping
Oh,
out of it.
Yeah, there wasn't exercise. You
Okay,
didn't pick
perfect.
it.
Okay.
Oh, so it can't be an exercise.
No, it's not. So you said trap bar, deadlift, push, press, and pull up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's yours?
I'll probably go with. Let's go with a trap bar, clean, and a squat.
It's clean. That's the first time I heard that one.
I'm going to pull up for sure. Just because I don't care how many push-ups you can do. If you can bang out 15 pull-ups, your push-ups probably fine. The next thing that we're going to look at would be a sled. 'Cause you can do a lot of work with a sled.
That's a good one.
That is a real good one.
Oh, and then a kettlebell.
It's not an exercise.
I know, right?
What kind of kettlebell?
Find it. I gotta go with the. I gotta
go with a piece of equipment.
I gotta go with the trap bar. The trap bar deadlift.
So trap bar, sled, and
Pull up.
Pull up. I would do pull up. One, because your back, biceps, and then we already know you build a strong back, you're gonna have a good push, decent push. It might not be super good, but it's gonna be pretty good. Of course, I'm gonna do sprints just because.
You consider sprints? I thought you said.
I said the exercise, 3 exercises.
Oh.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Yeah, I realized that after it was too late.
Yeah, see, I'm picking
I had,
sprint.
I had sprints first in my
Yeah,
head. I thought
sprints
just straight
was-
exercise.
I'm picking sprint
Uh-huh.
because one, the development of my legs, my core, my arms, my back, the strength, right? 3 to 5 times the force per step.
Oh yeah.
And then I'll do I said pull up, and then I'll do a squat.
Yeah.
You know,
I'll
so,
take out push press and press sprint.
I was put sprint
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay,
That's
our
like
closing
question.
closing question we
My
asked
last-
everybody.
My last question
Uh-oh.
for you. All right. And this is serious though.
Uh-oh.
This is the one. This is why you're here.
Oh man.
So you've been in a lot of gyms, right? So we gotta limit this to a piece of gym equipment that you've seen. Now it could be any piece of gym equipment that you've seen. Zombie apocalypse breaks out. What's your weapon of choice?
In the gym.
It's gotta be a piece of gym equipment.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it can't be some.
So it can't be the pitch shark. I can't pick that up.
I mean, you can use it. You just gotta tell us how.
Can't use the reverse hyper.
That is
I
a
could
terrible zombie weapon.
I gotta pick that sledgehammer up. I think I seen it
That's-
downstairs.
Yeah.
That's my
sledgehammer.
best bet. I mean, break some shins with that, and
Heck yeah.
that would be the
true.
muscle I would go for, a shin or knee.
You gotta go for brains. It's a zombie.
But I gotta get them down first.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
they
It's a
can't,
1-2 punch.
if they can't run, then I'll be good to
Yeah,
go.
he's
can
going.
crawl.
He's
He
going.
can crawl.
He's going sledgehammer. What was yours?
I was a wooden stick.
Yeah, mine's a down, sharpened
You
down.
sharpen it down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with my boy over here. I think this sledgehammer.
Hey, yeah, it's a great. There's no wrong answer.
I'm kind of built how he is, you know. So
If I
like,
hold the
I
sledgehammer
figured
too
we-
long, man.
I'm
I'm not
I'm
swinging.
hiding in places.
I'm okay
Yeah.
with it. At some
You know?
point, if I'm going down, I'm sledgehammering it out versus
Yeah.
poking him
I
in
have
the
to
shoulder.
Yeah, see,
I'm
I
have to
gotta-
sharpen the edge of the hammer instead.
All right, guys. Again, Cole,
Yes, thank you.
I want to thank you. Let's do this again sometime, sir. And again, thank you again for your service, man. I really appreciate that. And a lot of guys serve, and a lot of guys do things, but this guy's making the best of the best better, and passionate about it. And then he's making the best of the best clinicians better just by being around them because he's positive. And I've never hung around somebody more that doesn't make me want to sprint more than this guy. Like you spend 5 minutes with him, you're running. So thank you again
Thanks,
for
brother.
being you.
Appreciate
man.
you guys for watching.
Thank you.
Like, subscribe, all the stuff. And we'll catch you
Share.
guys later. Message us if you have questions.
Message us.
Peace.